What's happening, everybody? It's Zim again with another deck list. This time it's going to be premium, and we're going to go into one of my favorite deck lists where this card got me into the game itself, and it was Susanoo that got me into the game. That was the very first boss unit that I had, and we're going to go right into the deck list for the premium one I have. Alright everyone, we're going to go ahead and get into the deck list with Susanoo. Of course, we're going to start off with our boy Susanoo. Yes, I have one of the pretties. I blame somebody I love very much that gave me this, and I had to run it. So of course, you'll start off with 4 Susanoos. Now, to give you the heads up about the Susanoo deck, the whole point is not to turbo for what you need to get. It's to literally set up for it. Now, the setup won't take forever. That's the best part about this deck, because as fast as you're moving through it, you're going to get what you want out of it. But you want the original Susanoo G unit to go into the history collection. It actually helps you fast forward your deck and gives you 2 extra perfect guards in your hand, which saves you for a lot of different decks that like to slap you really hard and push you as fast as possible. After that, we're running 3 Amaterasus. Amaterasu is a very good card for multiple reasons. My very favorite reason is the fact that if you check it by revealing the top card of the deck, you can remove a card from the top of your deck and give your Vanguard an extra 10 in the crit, which you can do that early game as well. Prime example, if you go to a certain grade 1, which will be talked about, and you're going second when you do this, if you use the ability, use that ability that he has to check top 5 and reveal this card, the ability kicks off. So you can literally just stack crits early in this game, which puts pressure onto your Vanguard and makes your opponent say, all right, I'm not taking early damage with you. And it's a funny thing to do, because that's just a thing that people are not expecting, like, oh, we're just going to hit a crit early in drive check. No, I'm going to do it now and just not waste time. And then if I hit an extra crit, more damage, right? Alright, after that, we're going to say we're running 2 Popos. Now, Popos for the late game situation, which with this deck, you can go late with it, maybe early with it when the second you get to your second grade 3. The whole point of this card is when you're at 10 cards or less in your deck, this card, when it swings, gains 10, and you can only guard with zeros. When you combine that with a certain other card that will be brought up, it does something worse than that, where your opponent just can't do anything, and they only got one option out, and they hope they have it in their hands. But that will be talked about later on. The last addition to the deck will be something that came from the D format, which would be Reverence Rush Dragon. Reverence Rush Dragon is a very good card in this deck for multiple reasons. 1, it allows you to stack the grade 3 heal back to the top of the deck, and you can manipulate that with this deck, because there's a lot of cards that manipulate themselves to basically act as a trigger effect just by revealing set card. So when you need to stack certain cards like the grade 3 heal, or in this case when you want to stack her, for instance, and trigger her effect by using somebody to reveal her, that's what this card is for. It's a perfect way to just keep reutilizing cards in your drop. Alright, done with the grade 3s, on to the grade 2s. As far as the grade 2s, they're going to be a little techy, but of course you got the Riot Searcher when you just sometimes whiff on what you're looking for. It's also a good card just to have for Vanguard purposes, because it stacks the deck for you too as well when you're boosting with it. So it's just an all-around good card to have. I would definitely say put it at a 4 or a 3. Either one works for you. I just decided to put it at a 4 because I said, hey, if I end up getting it, I don't mind using it. It's not a problem for me. Now, as far as the other grade 2s, my favorite grade 2 to be used would be, of course, the Diviner for the V set. His ability is my favorite because it works on Van or Rear Guard, and the whole purpose of this card is to literally activate trigger effects if you hit them or just get cards to hand. So what you would do is, once you go to this card, you would Soul Blast 1, get your card from your hand, and reveal the top card. It gains 6 if it's a normal card. If it's a trigger effect, trigger effects go off. So this is where it's a good plus situation. If you have Amaterasu, the grade 3 at the top of your deck, this gains 6 plus the ability of Amaterasu, which gives it an extra 10 and a crit. So it's a 25 beat stick just swinging with a crit, which a lot of opponents don't want to deal with that on grade 2 turn. It's a little rough situation. Now, as far as the other grade 2, it's a tech of 2, but it's still a good choice, and it's Fuyo. Fuyo is a good choice for the fact of you can stack your deck. So let's say you had a certain card that you ditched in your drop at certain points. Let's say for this one, for other reasons, we'll explain why. You can counterblast one using this, placed on van or rear, draw a card, and stack your deck with a normal card. Now, how that would work in conjunction, if this was your Vanguard. If that's your Vanguard and you just use that skill, use this skill for rear guard purposes, you literally just guaranteed that Amaterasu is sticking at the top of the deck for you. So it's a nice combo to do when you want to apply pressure on your grade 2 turn and you're playing against an opponent that says, hey, I'm about to try to push you as much as possible. Do the same. Now, as far as grade 1s, this is where this is going to get weird. I have more grade 1s than the grade 2s for specific reasons. First of all, we're going to show this one off. Say, for example, or this Miko, I'm bad with names, so don't judge me on that. But this Miko, I prefer to be my first ride as possible, because her whole point is when she's placed on van to search for the one copy in my deck of this, so that way I can set up for the play that she has. On grade 2, when I go to grade 2, before I even ride to grade 2, I can use her ability to search for pieces of the top 5, add it to hand, and then ditch a card. Do you remember the situation I brought up about how I said, let's say you ditched a card? Let's say if we ditched this off of this. Guess what? It's in my drop, so I can pull the setup to do so. It helps out with a lot. And on top of it, the rear guard skill is great to have too when you want to just put cards in soul and stack the deck. So the whole purpose of this deck is not to just draw cards, but to stack what you need to put pressure on your opponent. And when you're doing that, you're also basically cycling out cards that you need to put either to the top or the bottom of the deck. Now, as far as if let's say we don't get to that grade 1, the other option of a grade 1 would be this one. And I brought this up earlier when I said that let's say that you went second and you make this your first grade 1 ride, and you so happen to use the ability to look at the top 5, because that's mandatory, and you hit Amaterasu. Amaterasu's skill kicks off after you fulfill the everything that finishes up with the skill, and this becomes 23 on your grade 1 turn with a crit, which is already a naughty situation. And I love that about that. It's just the fact that you can apply pressure for going second, and you can punish your opponent for saying, oh, you get to go second, so that's great and everything. I'm like, cool. If that happens, I'm gonna punish you for it. Now, lastly, before we get the triggers, there's one more thing that we put into the deck. It's a grade 0 that is an actually added thing, and that would be this card, Magical Calico. Now, the reason why I added this to this deck is for certain few strides in the deck. The whole purpose of this card is to pull the same card out if I can get if all of them are still in deck, or a certain few cards that I need to pull out of deck. I will explain the combo to you once we get to that point, but this card is added to the deck to help also pull cards from the deck that are not triggers. Now, as far as the trigger lineup, of course we're running the grade 3 heal. It's a beautiful card to use in this deck, especially when you have Reverence Dragon that can stack it, so you can just hit heals and basically say, alright, I can control my heal effort and not struggle about it. It's beautiful for that. Now, as far as crits, because we're playing OTT, so you're gonna run crits, right? We went with the critinals because you kind of just can't go wrong with those. Of course, you got the other version, which is the draw aspect of it, but that's for the decks when you're trying to draw out. This deck is not focused on drawing out. This deck is focused on stacking. And I'm not talking about stacking at the top. I'm also talking about stacking at the bottom. So you get both efforts on this type of style of this deck. So you rather go with the critical idea because one, better guard, and two, you ain't got to worry about drawing pieces out the deck unless you really want to try to do it on your own. The other crit that I chose to use would be this crit because just for the fact of if you want to slap it in soul and give your Vanguard an extra 10 is great and still get to draw a card off of it. It's just nice to have. The other crit that I run a 4 of will be this one right here because it's the Stride Fighter crit. You gotta love that. It just acts as a good guard and a good Stride Fighter, so when you don't have the pieces you need, just ditch the crit for the Stride. Now here's where folks are gonna have issues with the overtrigger aspect because depending on certain tournaments, you might get ones that say, hey, you can play the overtrigger, and then some that say you can't play the overtrigger. Well, I run the original Keter overtrigger for this one. Reason being because there's a combo you can use with a certain stride that I'm about to reveal in just a few moments. But of course, the whole point of this overtrigger is all rear guards gain drive checks, right? That's pretty much self-explanatory as it is if you hit it. Now, I'm about to show you a way you can guarantee it. One of the strides that can do that would be this stride. So let's say you had the overtrigger in your hand and you had this in your G zone. Waka can guarantee your overtrigger is stacked to the top of your deck. Usually if people see you go into this, they know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to slap the overtrigger and just get hella cards. And now in this way of doing this, you can just turbo the deck when you do that, and it makes the deck just stupid. And then if you pair this card up with a certain card that we just brought up, let's say you had 2 of those on the board, her other ability allows you to attack and you ditch a card and check the top 3. One normal card goes in hand, the rest go back to the top of the deck in any order. AKA, you can just stack the deck. So if you know there's some triggers at the top of the deck, stack the deck. So that's why Waka is ran for that reason. And the fact that you can just stack your overtrigger in the deck just makes it dumb. Now as far as other strides to use, of course you're going to use the ones that you're running with Susanoo, which is the history collection ones. The ones that allow you to get 2 protect markers, which I run a total of 5 just to be safe on that note. But it helps you get 2 protect markers in your hand, so that's 2 free cards to add to your hand. Then on top of it, you just get more cards off of it, because on hit, not on miss, doesn't matter. You get to undo the same thing that the Vanguard on-stride ability does, which the Vanguard's on-stride ability is Counterblast 1, look at the top 2, grab 1, and bot deck the other. This card just does it if you hit or miss. So it's just that's your opener if you're going first, or if you need protect markers, it's just a good opener to do in general. Now as far as other strides, I run 1 of Happiness Gathering Dragon King. It's a good card to go into as your second stride. Let's say you done open up with a bunch of G guards and everything. So you got, let's say 4 face. Let's say you got 4 face up after you're going into the history collection. So 2 G guards plus that. So this card, 1, it's just a card flip in your G zone. So no counterblast, no soul blast, which is one of the good benefits of this card. And you get to reveal the top amount of cards based on how many cards are in your G zone plus 2. So if I had 4 face up in my G zone plus 2, that's 6 cards that I revealed. All normal cards that are revealed from that check call to the board. All triggers go to your hand, and after that, trigger effects go off. Now, how does that apply to the over trigger? Just to go ahead and bring that up. If you hit the over trigger off of this, over trigger goes to hand and does not remove itself because it was not hit by trigger check. So you get to give something 100 million power and still keep the over trigger, which means you can go into Waka the next turn and reuse it again. That's what kind of makes that dumb. That's why I like this card, because if you just so happen to hit the over trigger, you're like, oh, I got the over trigger. It's in hand now. And next turn you set up and say, well, I'm going Waka, so I hope you're ready. And that's just one of the best parts about that card. But 1 of, I would think, is all you need. You can run it as a 2 of, but if you're doing more than 1 of this, I think you're defeating the purpose of your deck. The other thing I would go into would be Sterling Witch Momo. She's a very good card when you just want to slap somebody really hard, and you run it in conjunction with another card if you have a certain amount of cards in hand. Yes, it brings up an old style called Oracle, which is 5 cards or more in hand. That's where this comes in. So what you would do, if this, you'll call this to the board, make sure to show your opponent that you have 5 cards in hand. Slap that in soul, ditch a card from your hand, search your deck for up to 3 cards, and you reveal it to your opponent. Your opponent chooses one of those cards, and one of them goes to your hand. So your job is to make sure that 3 of these are in your deck. If you got 3 of them in your deck, you pull all 3 of them out, and then you literally make your opponent say, pick one. And what you do is, once that happens, one goes to your hand, the other 2 go to drop, and you literally pop all 3 of their skills by saying, bind a card from your deck, 10 in the crit. Bind the card from deck, 10 in the crit. And you do it 3 times. So your Vanguard just gains 30k, and then they just gain 3 extra damage, so they're 4 crit lethal. Then to make it worse, you would swing the Vanguard and use the Vanguard skill, which is the Counterblast 1, for the card face up in your G-Zone, and you can choose to ditch up to any amount of cards from your hand. Up to 3 if I'm correct. Each card that you ditch, your front row gains 10. If you ditch 3, your Vanguard gets a restand ability. So you're looking at your Vanguard being from, on Susanoo, being from 26 plus the 30 puts it at 56, plus the other 30 puts it at 86. So you're looking at an 86 with 4 damage swinging, and it restands itself. AKA, my favorite line to say to certain people, PG or not. That's your best bet out of that situation. So you'll run this in conjunction with this. Now there's another card you can use this with to also do that same mechanic with, but it does more restriction cost than anything. And that one would be, well, of course, the start of the deck, strat-wise. Stillwater. Stillwater has 2 abilities. One of them is you can Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and flip a copy of herself to draw 2 cards. So it helps out when your hand is just really small. But her second ability is what we are worrying about, which is if you're in Oracle, which is 5 cards or more in hand, you flip a card up in your G-Zone, doesn't matter what it is, and your opponent until the end of turn cannot guard with zeros or G-Guard. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, if they're running grade 1 PG, that's great and everything. Well, that's where it comes in. If you pull this stunt, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can do it with the conjunction of this, which uses Amaterasu to make that big, where they got no choice either to use their best guard if they have the grade 1 PG or in their hand, because they ain't gonna be able to use the grade 0 PGs. Or if you're later into the game using this and you're almost close to 10 cards on less than deck, you would go that route into this route, where literally you will stack the deck on purpose and unstack the deck on purpose and give all trigger effects to this. So that way when you swing this, if you're at 10 cards or less in deck, they have no choice but to guard with zeros. But thanks to this, it keeps it where they can't use zeros in the first place. So this card says you can only, and that says you can. What does that mean? You only got one option, and that's Elementary. So they hope to have the Elementary in hand, which most decks now search for it on purpose for that reason. So that's just a good way to lock people out when they say, I can't guard, and that's the point of it. And of course, we're not going to just not mention the G-Guardians, because the G-Guardians are definitely helpful in the deck, always. You never know when you're going to need to use them. I run 2 Amaterasus, of course. The fact of all you gotta do is have 4 cards in hand and they just gain 10k shield. Plus you get the soul charge and stack the deck to make sure if you, let's say you need to hit something defensive, and just keep it at the top of the deck. That's the best part about that. The other 2 G-Guardians I run, one helps you draw, and the other one doesn't. Well, they both draw something, but the deal is this one says you draw Counterblast 1, draw a card, and reveal a grade 1 or higher and engage extra 5. Now, how does that work in conjunction with this deck? If Amaterasu is at the top of the deck, that effect kicks her off, where you can give your Vanguard defensively 10k. So that lasts until the end of turn. So Amaterasu can be used offensively and defensively. The last one will be this one. This is after you done stack the deck in certain ways where you know what the cards are, so it makes it easier for you to use. You'll go into this Counterblast 1 and declare 2 different grades. As long as you know which one the grade is, the card will go to your hand and that gains 15. So there's plenty of ways you can utilize this. You can stack your deck with this, so that way this will go to your hand and you have that to use for next turn. And on top of it, you can bind the card and give your Vanguard an extra 10. So you can utilize this card defensively with that card as well. And that's like one of the combos that you can use in the deck. Now my favorite combo to use in this deck that I would say that gives more pressure to anybody would literally be going from, I would say, going from this grade 1 and then going to use this ability to search for any card at the top on top 5 and add it to my hand, and then going into this grade 2 and hoping that I ditch the Amaterasu in my drop. So hoping I ditch the Amaterasu in my drop, and then I will go into this card to Counterblast 1, draw a card. So I would just draw a card and then stack the Amaterasu at the top of the deck. Then I will use the ability to Soul Blast 1, ditch a card, and then reveal the top card. And it's, oh, a normal trigger. Cool, gain 6. Guess what? This goes to your hand and you just bind the top card of the deck. That gains an extra 10. So now this is a 25 beat stick with a crit. And then you can literally just say, okay, either take it or not. Or you can keep going to make it where you can stack another crit to give them more threatening value of, if you don't take the crit here, I will put a crit here. So either way, they're gonna try to take some type of damage, because mostly in premium, you need damage to run these decks. And that's just one of my favorite combos to bring up. But I hope you like what you saw. And that's the deck profile for Susanoo. Alright, that's the end of that video. I hope you enjoyed everything about the deck list that I made. If you like what you saw, just like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll keep making more. See y'all later.